I'm going to remember exactly once. That's my goal for this cohort, to remember to do it at least once without Jang having to remind me. Okay. So we came up, and when I say we, I mean the people who are responsible for CSS, came up with a number of techniques and rules that we can add to our styling in order to make our website look good. So let me take that over here. Let me grab a browser window, and then I will share my screen. Okay, so let's look at a site that is going to be really good for mobile. So yes, I'm an Apple fanboy, but that's okay. Oh yeah, let's go to the Canadian site. These people are way too fit. All right, in any case, here is the Apple site on a desktop size. I can see everything I need to. It's telling me today that their fitness service is something they want me to look into. This is the most important thing for apple.com today. I actually looked at it a day or two ago, and they were pushing something else. So I wonder if they change this daily. They might. And we come down, and actually that's all there is on this page. Fitness, all of their services at the top, only on Apple. That's new. Oh, and they're talking about all of their services here. Okay, so this looks great on my desktop, but how is it going to look on a mobile device? So luckily in our dev tools, we actually have a way of setting it. And let me just move that over there. Okay, so here, if you come over here, you can have a look. And this button right here shows toggle device toolbar. So this is going to set it, it's going to lie to the website and say that I'm using a mobile device. And bingo. Here it is. Let's look. Let's iPhone X. Sure. There we go. Because I've got an XR, so I believe that's what it's going to look like. So here is the mobile version of the site. Still gives us all the information that we want. We can actually look at the click on the what we call the CTA, the call to action buttons. We can shop for an Apple Watch. We can learn more about Fitness Plus. And the footer is all different. Turn it off. You can see the footer is wide. But now when I'm on a thinner screen, everything starts to stack up. And I can actually have a look at each of these, and it turns into a drop-down menu, and then I could find the service that I want to have a look at. So that is what we're looking to do. The menu's gone. You can actually click up here and it gives you the menu. Again, it's top to bottom. Doesn't matter how wide my screen is. It's going to show me in a format that is ideal for the way I want to see it or what's on my device. I still have never seen a site on an Apple Watch, and I probably never will, because that would be way too small, even if you had like only one thing on it. But there we go. Oftentimes, and let me just turn this back to responsive. I can grab this And as I move this over, you could see how the site is responding to different widths. And you see right here at about, what is it, 734, 735, there's a breakpoint. What a breakpoint is a width of a screen. So we start with the smallest breakpoint. So I can go as tiny as I want. Whoa. That is completely illegible and unusable. But if I have a screen that wide, I'll be able to look at it. So a breakpoint is where we change the styling so that it suits a particular form factor. In this case, I've widened it to approximately the tablet width. So the top is still the same as it was on mobile, and the bottom is still the same as it was on mobile. But now they've just moved around images and such to make it look nice. And then finally, that's not a lot of, what is about 835, and that is the desktop size. Wow, that's a really skinny screen. Normally it's something like 1024 pixels. Pixels. Now, I've mentioned pixels before. Can somebody tell me what a pixel is? Come on.
It's a dot, like based on resolution.
Well, it started out that way. It's now a particular size. So I've got a high-res monitor. You may or may not have a high-res monitor. This is 4K monitor, and it's got pixel density. So it's actually more, each pixel of size has more than one pixel in it. I know that's a little bit weird to think about, but pixel has ended up meaning to be a particular size. All right. Now let's have a look at a site that perhaps is not quite as nice. Let me just pull it up. I actually, so I Googled, and I Googled for a non-responsive website. This is what I found, and I think it's actually pretty cool. Some guy at Dubuque University, who I guess is teaching the same sort of thing as I am today. This is not a responsive site. So first thing that you should notice is that there's a set width to this site. And even when I shrink the site, instead of changing the styling in order to make it usable, I'm just losing everything over to the right-hand side. Now I could still scroll over there and find it, but most people aren't going to think of how to scroll over to the right. So I like that so much, I made a copy of the site, and we're going to use it as, we're going to turn it into a responsive site today. But before I do that, let's see. Okay, so the first thing is the dangers of having way too many windows open for code. Okay, is it this one? Yes, it's this one. All right. Okay, so I went and I copied the HTML to the site. Don't worry, I'm not violating copyright, or maybe I am. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure it's okay. I'm sure it's fine. I removed all his copyright notices. Also, this site is poorly formatted. All right, never mind. So let's have a look at how this has come out. Okay, so here is the site now on my machine. Yep, still crappy. So what's the first thing we can do? Well, the first thing we can do is add a meta tag for the viewport. And this is something that I'm surprised isn't actually added by default. Or maybe I'm not surprised, but here, let me just tab in so this looks a little nicer. There we go. Oh, and then just tap that in. There we go. Okay, so I noticed by default that you did add the character set of UTF-8, so that's good. That should generally be something that you just have on your site. If you have to choose a character set, and I'm not really going to go into it very much, tells you right here what character sets are, just make sure you're consistent. And UTF-8 is the one that most people use. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to add a meta tag, and let's just hold on. All the phones. I still have to look it up. There we go. When you set up a website, or when you use the exclamation mark tab in order to create your framework, you see this one line here. That's meta name viewport content equals width equals bytes width. So this is basically checking to see what is the width of the page that we're on, or the device that we're on. Now, I don't think this has actually changed anything here. No, not really. But this is going to help, especially when it comes to images. Let me pull up, I found this cool example. Here we go. So here, it talks about the viewport and what the viewport is. And here is a site that they've set up without the viewport tag. And when I pull this in, the image stays the same size and everything is yucky. Yucky being the technical term. Here, let's pull that over. Yeah. So that image is not shrinking in order to fit however fit or however narrow I make the screen. All we did here is the same sort of thing. I love how Chrome is offering to translate the Latin for me. That's awfully nice of them. But you'll notice here that the image now fits within the screen, as does the text below. So I do not have to scroll side to side in order to have a look. And that's just due to the viewport meta tag that we've set. So the takeaway from this is just make sure you have that line of code in any HTML that you create. You don't have to think about it too much. It doesn't hurt. Why we don't do this by default? Well, again, when the web was created or when CSS was written, we didn't have mobile devices that actually did more than, call people. So we didn't consider narrower screens. One of the requirements, or tenets, I should say, of the web standards is that you never break anything going forward. So we have to add this rather than just assuming that every site's going to work with the viewport being set, because who knows, somebody somewhere may have gone and made some change and needs to have a different width for their viewport. Okay. So the meta tag's important. Something else that is actually useful for us is using percentages. So if I set everything with a particular width, then, and everything here, I believe, yeah, everything here is just set to a particular width. So this is set in stone. We can use relative units. So these are absolute units. So pixels, we also have points, which is something if you do print. Inches and millimeters actually work. In general, though, if you're going to set an absolute width or absolute measurement anywhere, you're going to be using pixels. Although if you do get into print CSS, that's kind of an interesting way, right? So if you print out a page, you want the styling to be responsive to a printer, right? There's a difference between a web page that I am viewing on a screen and something that I printed out. Recipe sites actually do this fairly well. I print out recipes all the time for my wife, and they look completely different when you print them out as opposed to when you see them on the page. So we can set percentages. So let's start with the container ID. So let's just find that. There we go. We've got this div with an ID of container, and I believe it just, yeah. So it just holds the entire site. Okay, so let's have a look at our page. And let's just make one small change to our style. And instead of saying width equals 1000 px, I'm going to change it to width equals, let's call it 75%. So what is it 75% of? It's 75% of its parent. Okay, so in this case, container sits within the body. The body is always the entire page. Okay, so I'm saying make the width of this 75% of the site. So let's have a look. See, already we can see changes. And it's still not great, but now the menu is at least attempting to grow and shrink and stay on the page, as well as this this menu on the right, kind of doing all sorts of weird things. There we go. Bet you that's a float. So that is one thing that we can do, is we could just set things, and it doesn't have to be the width. We can also do things like set the margin. So let's come back to the styles, and I'm going to set the width to 100%. Okay, but now instead of margin auto, I'm going to say margin. Now it's going to be 0 and 20%. What does that rule do? If I set a margin to 0, 20%, what does that actually do?
Margin top to 0.
Yep. So it's if I have two values, it's top and bottom and left and right. So let's come back here. Oh, that's done weird things. So that's probably not what I want. So the margin on the container is a little weird there. Let's set that back to 0 and set that to 100%. There. Now the whole thing is staying wide. But you'll notice that this menu off to the right continues moving all the way to the right. And that doesn't look very good to me. The top kind of looks good, although we want to move away from the edge a bit. So let's put some padding on this sucker. And now I could put in percentages, I could put in pixels. There's also another option I can use, and that is using Ms or rems, REM units. So let's set this to 0. Or you know what, let's do one rem. So rems and Ms are very, see, it's moving away from the side. That looks a lot better. So rems and Ms are very similar. An M is going to be the same width or the same distance, no matter where you are on the page. The relative is relative to the parent. Now, the difference between the two is a little subtle there. So I can show, what's the best way to do this? Let's go to the main and let's add a font size. And we're going to say 0.5 REM. Okay. And you can see all of my text has gone tiny, which may or may not be what I actually wanted to do. But I've now set everything to the main to be 1.5 relative units. What is it relative to? It's relative to the parent. What is the parent in this case? The parent of main is, I'm sorry about the, here. Sorry about the indentation. I would mark myself down for not having proper indentation. Yeah, there we go. Super. So it is relative to its parent, which in this case is actually the container. That's interesting. So let's move this out from the main. Let's put it into the container. See how that changed things. The menu on the right is tiny. So then let's go down to main here, and I'm going to set the font size to 2 REM. And now, and it's relative, I always get these two mixed up. REM is going to multiply it for the entire page, and EMs is for the parent. Let me just confirm that by changing this to REM to EM. There we go. So now the body is the right font size, everything else is tiny. So EM is in relation to the parent. What's the parent of main? The container. The container, I've set the font size relative to its parent, which is the body. Does anybody know what the default font size is? If I just make a P tag without anything else on it?
I think it's 16
Yeah,
pixels.
16 pixels. That's correct. So it's kind of good that it's divisible by 2 a lot. So the designers among you will be happy to be able to deal with that and then pass your design on to those of us who have no idea how to design things. And it's easy for us to set. Okay. So this is pretty cool. I still have the weirdness with this thing or this menu kind of dropping below this. Now, actually, maybe this is a good thing. However, having it there is probably not good. So what else can we do? Well, we can actually set a max width and a min width. So let me show you. I'm going to go to the container and I've got the width of 100%. I could say the max width is going to be, well, I could say fit content, which I believe is the default, but I'm going to say 500 pixels. In general, when you're using max and min width, you're using absolute values like pixels. So now I'm saying 500, and now you'll notice that the entire page is, even though the width is set to 100, the maximum is set to 500. That's a little low. Let's set it to 1,000. Okay. And now we have everything is jammed over to the left, which we can fix fairly easily. But now you can see that I have a maximum width. I can also set a minimum width. Here we'll set it to 500 px. Setting a max and a min width can be highly dependent on how you or the design is thought of. So here we go, and you see once I hit 500 pixels, then everything stops shrinking and I start to get what we call overflow. Right, so the menu bar. So this is actually really good for this menu bar here, this max width and min width. Except that now I can't find the user guides or the blog's links when I'm looking at it on a tiny phone. But it's starting to look a little better. Okay. A newer unit that newer relative unit that we actually all love is the VH and the VW units. So VH and VW stand for viewport height and viewport width. The viewport is the size of the window, and not the whole window, just the part of the window that's displaying the web page. So 100 VW is however wide this is right now, which I think is, but there we go. It's 1123 pixels wide. So it's going to go 1123 wide. So what I could do here is I could set this nav. Here, let's go to the nav. Let's set the width of this nav to 100 VW. And now, no matter what I do, it will take up 100% of the width of the page. Still have issues, actually not as bad. Now things are starting to stack up when I get to tiny widths. Nobody ever has to design for 226 pixels, so that's actually pretty good. So VW is great. Wasn't available to us in the beginning, but now that it is, it's a bit of a lifesaver. We love it. DH is in the opposite direction. So one of the things that that has always been difficult to do is to center things. But not anymore. Now we can easily center things with Flexbox. I showed you that before the break. But now we have an easy way of figuring out how high our viewport is. And that is just setting a height to 100 VH. And that will always be the exact height of the viewport. Okay. I'm going quickly here. I should slow down. Are there any questions up to this point while I take a sip of tea? Am I not making the site so much more beautiful?
So far, you haven't used any @media queries.
No, that's coming. That's coming. Matter of fact, that's next.
John, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Just back to the REMs, the REMs and the EMs. So if you size something using REM, that has no relation to its parent?
No. EM will have relation to the parent. REM is based on that 16 pixels. That's the default size of text. So one EM is always going to be 16 pixels no matter where you are.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
If you use EM and REM to size, do you use them to size anything but text?
You can use it for margin. Or margin and padding. Oftentimes that is used a lot. And when I say margin and padding, it should always be EM units, right? So we know that's 16 pixels.
Because there's no default margin or padding size, is there?
Well, there are the browser defaults, which will be set. You can, anytime you set a rule in CSS, you're overriding the browser default. The browser default rules always have the lowest priority. All right. Cool. So let's talk about media queries. Media queries are how Apple there figured out the different widths of the page and how to set everything on that page depending on the device width. So media queries can actually do a number of things that are really cool. Let's go here. Let me just see. So let's set up a media query. And what I'm going to do is set a media query that is going to change the background color based on how wide the page is. So inside my CSS, right here at the bottom, here's the syntax. We can do at media, screen, as opposed to print. I could set a print style here. So this is going to apply to every screen. And then I'm going to say only screen. Only screen. And let's say, or min width. Let's go with min width. Of, I don't know, let's call it 600 pixels, just to make it different than the others. Okay, so this has to be an absolute unit. It doesn't make sense to have it as a relative unit, so this has to be an absolute. So now I can put in rules that will apply only when the site is a minimum of 600 pixels wide. So this, if it's minimum, it's going to apply to things that are larger than it. So let's set the background color to, I don't know. And what did I do? Oh, right. I can't actually set that directly. I have to then get a selector. So this is just going to say anything within here is going to apply. However, I still have to use selectors. So let's use the container selector, which I believe was an ID of container. And then we could say background color of orange. Okay, let's have a look. And wow, we do have a background color of orange. That is really pretty for varying definitions of pretty. But you can see here that as soon as I get less than 600 pixels, that style gets removed. So it will check the width, and as soon as the width does not apply, it will add or it will apply those rules or remove those rules. So in general, you're going to have one media query for phones and another for tablets. So that's my, but I've also set a minimum width. And what that's all about is that when I start coding my site, I want to actually start coding it at the mobile size. So mobile first, you may have heard of before. You want to code for mobile first. And this actually helps because mobile layouts are generally easier to work on than desktop layouts. They're simpler. Everything is generally stacked on top of each other. So let's set another here. I want to set this, I want to set the nav. I want to set the nav to be stacked up when I hit my 600 pixel size. So instead of being in line like this, I want to change so that the display of all of these goes to block. All right, so let's see, how would we do that? Any ideas of what I should do in order to change the styling of those menu items? so that they're stacked on top of each other when I get to my particular width.
Would you change it to display a flex box at that point?
Yeah, flex is good. Flex is good. In general, I don't like changing some display to flex though. But let's have a look. What am I setting to flex? Here, let's have a look at the HTML again. So here's the nav. We've got a nav with a UL and a bunch of LIs within that. So how am I going to make this stack this? So an
Change
LI,
the LIs, maybe?
yep. All right. So let's grab the nav LI. And again, I'm going to do this within. So I'm just going to say nav LI. What does that mean when I put nav and LI like that? Gottfried, remind me. I can't remember.
It's narrowing down the specificity.
What relationship does LI have to nav here?
Li is the child of the nav tag.
Technically, it's the descendant. It's the grandchild of the nav. If we go back and have a look here, you'll notice that the nav has a UL, and inside the UL we have LI. Okay, so what should I do with this? What rule should I add to nav LI in order to have it stack?
Display. And either flex or block, right?
Okay, well, choose one.
Gottfried already chose flex.
All right, we'll do flex. I just typed flock, which isn't a thing, but I've decided I'm going to make it a thing because that's awesome.
Oh, you'll have to make the flex direction column, right?
Well, okay. Flex direction column. Did that do anything? Yes. Yes, it did. Well, actually, that's a little bit weird. So in actuality, it's applying to, you know why that's happening, right? So because I have set the minimum width, that means the default is to have it, the default is actually at this size. So this is the default. This is where the media query takes place. So I shouldn't be putting that inside the media query. I should be putting it outside the media query. So let's change that. So here we go. Here's the nav LI. We've got display inline. We're going to do display flex and flex direction column. And then what do I do inside this media query? Remember, we're doing the larger size. So what do I put in here in order to make it do side by side again? Because now it's always going to be, if I save, it's always going to be stacked.
Like display inline?
Yep, let's try that. Okay, and that's stacked and that's off. Awesome. So now we have an actual mobile menu working for us quite nicely, actually, when we get to the smaller size. What else could I have done? I I'm not a big fan of changing from display flex to display inline and back. Generally, if it's flex, I like to keep it flex the entire time.
I was just gonna ask earlier, why don't you just use grid?
Because flex is better.
Okay.
I could use grid, but I find in general flex is more flexible, pun not intended. Grid means that you have everything in precise columns and precise rows. Here it's you could play with the flex rules, and you can do 90% of what you can do with grid with flex, but you can also do more with flex. So let me, instead of setting this to display inline, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to set the display flex. Yeah, display flex is going to stay here, and instead I'm going to set the flex direction practically. It makes no difference except that it didn't work. Hold on, what did I do? Save. What did I do? Flex direction, row. Oh, wait. Display flex. Oh, here. This is where I want row. No. This is where I want column. So it's staying column, and then when I get to this smaller, oh, I know why. It's because we set flex on the wrong element. What, instead of putting the flex on the nav A or the nav LI, should actually, I think, put it on the nav UL. There we go. That's better. Yep. That's much better. Do you understand why I needed to put it on the UL? Flex applies to the children of the element that you apply flex to. So in this case, all of the nav items were inside that unordered list. So if I apply flex to the UL, I can then set my different flex properties on that. Okay. Look how beautiful that is. All right. Okay. I'll tell you what, let's take a break. You know, it's your first class since your vacation, so let's ease into it. So let's come back at, say, 5 after the hour. Is that cool? Well, doesn't matter if it's cool. That's what I'm going to do.
Really cool.
There we go. Nico says I'm cool. All right. See everybody in 12 minutes. Mars. It looks like Mars.
If you use a grid, can't you just use like fit content? It does basically the same thing with grid.
Probably it's use the tool that you're familiar with. I haven't
Right.
used grid in a project before.
Yeah.
And I've used Flex several times. So Flex does what I need it to. Yes, I believe you're correct, but you probably have more experience with grid than I do. So
Okay. I just see like weirdly conflicting. I think it seems just like a matter of opinion, I guess, on the internet, because half the time people are like, no, grid's garbage, use Flex always. And then the other like other people are like, no.
oh yeah,
Flex is garbage, use
we
Grid
all
always.
have our opinions.
It's like that
This is-
semicolon thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We all have our opinions, and that's cool. We're passionate about what we do.
Right.
I really like Flex.
Gotcha.
If you try both and you decide that grid is better for what you want it to do, then go
Yeah.
for it.
Okay, cool.
But I just find Flex is flexible.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like basically the same thing. So,
Yeah, there are edge cases for both.
right. Gotcha.
How did the OS? Was it you who was talking to
Oh
me?
yeah, probably, yeah. I put Linux on my laptop just for fun, I guess, which is good. But then I accidentally put it on both partitions somehow, so I kind of nuked my Windows. But that's not a huge deal.
No, nuking Windows is never a huge deal.
Well, except for like half my Steam library is inaccessible now, but whatever. I don't even use this. This is the thing I use for like kind of messing around with anyway. So
Yeah. So I have this weird setup. I have an Xbox,
oh yeah,
and just because my monitors are way nicer than my TV,
right.
I actually stream my Xbox through my, like, it's a teeny little cheapo Windows box that I bought for a couple $100.
Yeah,
Right, because I don't need it to do any processing directly. I just need it to stream from my Xbox.
right.
But I've run into an issue where the account that I generally use online is for Microsoft things is
Yeah.
different than the account I set my Xbox up on.
Oh,
So I either have to change a bunch of usernames and passwords, probably not that many for like Microsoft accounts,
right.
because I can't stream from one account to another account. It's
That's weird
It is weird.
and
Just
annoying.
let me merge the accounts. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, I don't like how they have the default to that game bar stuff when you install Windows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kept getting spammed with like McAfee, even though I factory reset my computer like 3 times, and it's still just giving me like, yo, you want to buy McAfee? And it's like, I
No.
don't actually. That was actually the tipping point where I'm like, you know what? All right, this is Linux is getting on this thing.
Yep, I don't blame you at all. 4 of you within half a second of each other. Nice.
We planned it.
I think you must have. You must have. All right. Okay. That was a nice break. Thank you, everybody, for being prompt. I'm so proud of you all. It's great. It's great. Never had a class I'll show up on time like you guys do. All right. So responsive. Responsiveness is cool. In general, if you are going to be doing work, you're going to be working responsively. Having said that, I don't generally work on my day job for responsive sites just because I'm building tools for people who are actually sitting at computers. I'm not going to show you anything I built because none of it will work with responsive widths. But that's okay. It all depends on your use case. In general, though, when you're building a site, and especially when you get around to building your own portfolio site, make sure that it is responsive. Anybody here have a portfolio site? No? Don't worry. You will. You will. For a junior, speaking as someone who just hired a junior, I always have a look at portfolio sites for people who apply for positions, just because I want to see something that I know they have built. Oftentimes, oh, I helped build. So I did 3 pull requests for the Mozilla browser. The Firefox browser is 1/1,000,000th me because of those 3 little changes I made. Just, it was to get into open source. But saying that I built Firefox is not quite true. I helped out a little bit with Firefox. You really have to try hard to actually find any of the code that I've written in, I don't even remember what I did now. And it was only 6 months ago. All right. So I got way off topic. So the next topic we want to cover is syntactically awesome style sheets, also known as SASS. And I find it it's very appropriate for me to be talking about SASS. That's what my students have told me in the past. I'm not sure why. All right. So here is the SASS site, sas-lang.com. What is SASS? So first of all, SASS is what we call a preprocessor. A preprocessor is something that parses our code and turns it into CSS or JavaScript or HTML. In this case, it's going to turn it into CSS. Why do we want to use preprocessors? Any ideas?
No, it's fine. I got one.
So is it
Go ahead.
Is it a way to not reuse code so often?
CSS is a wonderful language, but it's not good at things languages are generally known for, like variables. You can't make a variable in CSS. You can make a variable in JavaScript, which allows you to do all sorts of things, but you can't create a variable in CSS. So what SASS does is it creates it's a language that we can write things in that will then compile what we've written into regular CSS. Why do we need it in regular CSS? Why don't we just leave it in SASS?
Because the browser doesn't understand SASS.
Correct. Absolutely. So browsers only understand how to parse 3 languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Front-end developers, we have preprocessors for all of them. So for CSS, the big 3 are Sass, there's Less, and there's another one called Stylus. I've actually played with all 3. I think Sass is the one I like the most, but oftentimes I'll just do things with regular CSS though, until I need to do something a little more interactive. So let's have a look. I'm at the site. It's telling me why I should use it. Follow them on Twitter. No, thanks. And it tells us how to install. So we need to install a tool outside of what we're using in order to get SASS to work. So in VS Code, there are some plugins that will work. I actually had a look. This one is the most popular. Sorry, this one, but nobody has actually maintained this thing. Here, let's go. Let's have a look. So this is the GitHub site, and oh, hey, the newest, yeah, 3 years ago. Yeah, this is an abandoned project, unfortunately. And normally that wouldn't even matter so much, but SASS has recently come up with some upgrades that are not compatible with this version. So even though it is the most popular at 1.8 million, that's not the one generally I would use. I would use this one. But today, instead of using this one, I am going to use the command line version of the app. And this will work no matter what code editor you're using. So what we need to do, we're going to open this up. So don't worry about this tool versions. I have some conflicts because of my day job, so I needed to set something in order to get SASS to work. So all we need to do here is we can do an npm install -g SASS. There we go. Awesome. So now I have the command line tool run. So how do I actually get my site to process SASS? Well, the first thing I need to do is change this CSS file into an SCSS file. SASS has 2 slightly different languages that it uses. One is called actual SASS, and the other one that most people use is SCSS. So we're here, syntax overview. So here is what we're going to use. And the beauty of SCSS is that it is what we call a superset. It's a superset of regular CSS. So that means that every CSS file is a valid SCSS file. So in theory, all I should need to do is just change the styles.css styles.scss. Now, if I come back, let's close that. Come back to my non-responsive website, you can see all my styles are gone. It's because I haven't pre-processed anything yet. So let's turn on the preprocessor. So I'm going to say SASS. That's watch styles.scss. So when I run this, it creates 2 new files for me. It recreates my styles.css. It also creates a map file. And when you are saving your project to GitHub or wherever, you should save both of these files. You should not actually go into the CSS, make any changes here, because if you make changes here, it'll overwrite any changes in the CSS file. Don't worry about the map file at all, but that's for helping to debug when you're actually running it in a browser. So now that I've got this running, I can come back here. I could see my beautiful styles are set again. So what things does this give me? Well, it does give me things like variables. So the way I set a variable, let me just come here, make sure I know what I'm doing. I believe it is. Let's come. So you start with. Oh. All right, hold on. Where did I put it? Far too many windows. Okay. Ah, yes. So I can create variables right up here. I can say something like dollar, here, we'll call it background color. I'm Canadian, so I put a U in color. And then I could set it to this value here. So now, whenever I want to use this shade of blue, all I have to do is come down and replace this with and you can, it still works. And this is the blue here, I believe, that we're talking about. Yeah. So I've set this to now a variable. Now imagine a larger site with more pages. I worked on a site that had, I want to say 15,000 lines of CSS on it. Now imagine if the company came around to me and said, hey, we're changing our brand color. So you have to change all of your colors from this code to a different hex code. Going through and changing all of that manually would suck. But if I set background color and I just need to come and change it here in one location, that's perfect. All right, so that's pretty cool. Something else we can do is we can create what we call partials. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it styles. And I'm going to take all of my styles and put them in here. Now it's going to complain to me in a moment. There we go. And oh, it figured it out. There we go. I didn't need to change anything. No, it didn't figure it out. Let's restart that. And now it's going to be styles/styles.scss. There we go. And refresh. What's going? Oh, not a supported style. Strict mime checking is enabled. I love you, Chrome. You make my life so much easier. That's weird. It was working before, and now it's decided it doesn't like it.
Looks like styles.css is in the styles folder now, and maybe it should be in the root.
No.
No.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I need to change it. I need to change it here. There we go. Yay. That was it. I forgot to change. So I am pointing the style sheet still to the CSS file. And that's because, again, HTML and CSS, that's what we're actually sending to our end user. We're not sending the SASS file at all. So I need to make sure I'm pointing at the right file. I'm not pointing at the SASS file. I'm pointing at the CSS file. So something else I can do is create what we call partials. And what a partial is a collection of reusable styles that I might want to use in several different locations. Let me give you an example. So I'm going to create, let's create a folder here. We'll call it partials. Do that one more time. And inside partials, I'm going to create a new file. And this is important. When you're naming a SASS partial, you have to start the name with an underscore. And I'll tell you why in a second. So I'm going to call this typography. SCSS. Okay, so I've got this typography file. I'm not watching it, so it's not actually getting changed, but I don't need to watch it. All I need to do is pull it in. And what I can do there is I can just say inside my styles up here, let's do it at the very top, is we can do @use. We're going to use /typography. Note I didn't put the SCSS behind it. It just automatically knows. And let's put the semi there. All right, so now I've got this partials and yep, nothing's broken. So let's actually put things in there. Let's take this font family. And we're going to, Lucinda here. I don't like that one, but hey, I didn't make that page. So I'm going to go into the typography and I'm just going to say, going to create a variable here.
So you don't put the underscore when you're linking to it?
No. No, you don't. And let's do this. Now, there's no magic to what I'm calling these variables. I'm just naming them what I want. And I'm going to set that to, I don't know, 18 px because it's non-standard. Okay, and now I'm going to say all the H1s are going to have this default style. So I'm going to say font size 3 REM. We'll say H2s are going to be red to REM. So now I'm creating all of my typography rules and I'm putting them in one location. So I want to have all of my H1s to be 3 REMs in size. 3 REMs is what in this particular instance? Three times what
48.
size? Sorry?
3 times 16.
3 times 18.
Oh,
Because-
right, sorry.
Yeah, now I haven't actually set the base font size. So what I should do actually is say body size, and then we go base font size. There. Now that'll work.
Do
Right.
the
So-
variables have to start with $?
Yes. That's how you quickly recognize what variables are. You'll notice that SAS really likes using the @ quite a bit. Here we go. Wow, I've really broken this whole thing. But that's okay because of all the styles that I changed up. So what I'm going to leave that as is. Okay, so I now use what I call a partial. So now I can import that. I've imported that into this page. Maybe I have a different page that I also want to pull that in. I could put all my site defaults in a typography page. Things that you're normally going to see are things like all the variables. So I could take this color and put it in its own variables file. Again, I'm probably going to put more than one color because if a variable that only saves me one line isn't really saving me anything. But generally, you're going to get a palette of colors from your designer, and then you can just set them inside a variables file. Typography is another one. Another one that I actually really like. So does anybody know what a CSS reset is? So normalize, in this case, normalize CSS is a set of rules. And what it does is it removes all of the browser default rules. So let's have a look. I'm not going to download it. Instead, what I'm going to do is just copy this version of it. And I am going to make another file here. I'm going to call it normalize. Okay, and inside normalize, I'm just going to paste this default set of rules. If you download that that page that I showed you, it will have these rules in here, and we'll go over these rules in a second. And last thing I need to do is I need to import. And generally, you should import your normalize at the very beginning. Sorry, not at normalize, it's at use. There we go. And how bad, it hasn't really messed anything up. But the reason that I put this here is, oh yeah, save it. Has it changed anything? Not really. This removes or sets some standard defaults for your browser. You do not rule or you do not govern how a user sets up the default rules. Did you know you can set your own default CSS or browser styles? I found out sometime last year and went nuts with it. So every crappy looking page looked wild. But here it's doing things like setting the margin to the body to 0, which is something people like to do. Main is always going to be a display block. H1s are always going to look like this, and so on. So these are just a bunch of different rules that we can assign so that when we know exactly what we're going to get. Normalize is a standard practice in the industry. Yeah, this is a pretty short one. So I'll leave this one in here and you can actually have a look at what the rules are. And there's also a link to the GitHub that I got it from. So that is the normalize. So what else can we do with SASS? Sorry, 1 second. Oh, here we go. Right. So variables. Oh, how can I forget? This is the killer feature of SASS, and that is nesting. Okay, so let's go back to this styles.css, and you'll notice these are the styles that I inherited. We've got nav, and we've got nav ul, and we've got nav li, and we've got nav a. And all of this is a little bit wild because it's hard to read. We can make this easier to read, and watch this. Be prepared to have your mind blown. I can nest these rules here inside here. So now I find this way easier to read. Now I don't have to look for different nav, what other selectors. Here we go. Same thing for an A. So let's get rid of that. Let's do that. A. Oh, no, not quite. Need to do that.
I have a quick question, John.
Go for it.
So let's say in single page, there are multiple ULs and LIs. So when you use it like this, does it apply to this specific UL and LI or all of it?
This is going to target all of, oh, I've put this under nav UL. Okay, so this is going to target all of the LIs under a UL that is under a nav. If I want to target something in particular, I should assign a class name or an ID to it. If I just want to get, say, all the H1s, then I can do that. So luckily, all of my LIs and As are under the UL. So let's get rid of that nav there. And I'm just going to copy this whole thing and put it under nav. There we go. So now we've got nav, we've got a UL within the nav, and then anything that's an LI inside the UL, and so on. So I find this actually to be really helpful in being able to organize my CSS. Another really cool feature is the ability to use the and symbol, and watch this. So down here, I have this net, here we go. I've got nav, a, hover, focus, and active. So what I can do here is I can go and just make sure I've got it right. And sorry, not that, it is and colon hover. Let's do this. Right, and how do I set it if I want to? Oh, I think oh yeah, here we go. Focus, comma, active. So what that is doing is it is focusing on the pseudo selectors. So in this case, hover, focus, and active. So when I hover over my anchor tag, it is going to show us the correct styling for that. So right here, you'll see that there's a style, and that's still working, even though I've now put that into SASS. You'll also notice that this is much more terse. And by terse, I mean it's shorter, it's easier to read, it all follows through. So I now know that whenever I want to find something inside a nav, I just look for the nav element. And if I finish doing everything inside the nav, I can close that up and then go to work on everything else. That is another killer feature. Mix-ins. Mix-ins is the last thing I'm going to bring up because they are also cool. So what a mix-in is a set of rules that you can apply. Think of it as a function. So for instance, let's create a mix-in. Now I could put the mix-in in a partial. I'm going to actually put it outside a partial. Normally I would make a partials, sorry, a mix-ins partial. So I'm going to create a mix-in. I'm going to call this reset element. And I'm going to say margin of 0, padding of 0, and this style of none. Okay. So what this will do You can think of this sort of like a variable, because now I can say down here, let's put this on the container. Yeah, I know the padding's 1 EM here, but I'm going to get rid of these. And I am going to say, and generally you want to put them at the top, you need to include, and we just give it the name of the mixin, which is reset element. And semicolon afterwards. So what this has done is I've now able to combine these. So say I set margin 0, padding 0 to a number of elements on my page. Whenever you're repeating yourself, that's probably a sign that it's something that should be automated. And this is what this allows me to do. So I can now go to anything that has a margin of 0 and a padding of 0 and replace all of those rules with these couple of rules. I can also, when I do the reset element, I can add a input. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to call it padding, and the default of padding is going to be 0. And then what I can do is say padding is going to equal $padding. And then when I call it, I can call reset element and then pass it in, just like a JavaScript function, what I want to set it to. So in this case, I'm going to set it to 1 EM. And everything's back to the way it was. So you can think of a mixin like a function. It gives you output that you can then put into your styling. You can do math, which I'm not going to demo, but that's pretty cool as well. Math in CSS is like mind-blowing. You would think adding numbers would be easy, but not in CSS. Newer versions of CSS actually have calc. But for the longest time, we had to do it inside SASS. So here, calc just basically allows you to add numbers together or do any sort of math. This is in regular CSS, however, it's inside SASS as well. So I'm going to recommend that you have a look at the SASS site and go over it and make sure that you understand how you can use SASS to make your life better. Because trust me, it can absolutely do that. Okay. Let me go through my list of things I need to cover today. And I'm not going to show that. Nesting variables, intro to SASS. I think that about covers it. Wow, this did go quickly. All right. Are there any questions? I will, as normal, I will post the video, post the code, so you can all have a look at what we did today.
Yeah, I have a question, John. So
Yes.
regarding the media queries, we don't include media queries in SASS, so that's different.
You can use media queries inside SASS as well.
Okay.
And that SASS just allows you to do these other things. So you still want to have the media query. You can actually put media queries inside elements. Let me just here. Let's go and search for There we go. So there's an at media. There we go. The at media rule does all the above and more. At rules. Namespace. SAS script expressions. Wow, that's exciting. To be used directly in feature queries. So here it's showing using a media query with SAS, so you could still use at media. Here, that instead of me having to give it a number, they're using a variable here. And we could still do, within the media query, we could still do embedding. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And here is, that's interesting. When possible, SAS will also merge media queries that are nested within one another to make it easier to support browsers that don't natively yet support nested at media rules. I think most browsers do that, but you can nest media queries. Media is not just for sizes. You can check for other things as well. And if we come here, we can see that testing media queries, using media queries. Let's go to that guide. And we can types, so screen and print are the types. Media features, so we can look for things like cover, max width, min width. Color means somebody who has a color screen. I don't think that's a problem anymore. I haven't seen a black and white monitor in over 20 years, but I suppose it could happen. Oh, media speech, that's a fun one. If you write CSS for screen readers, then show me how you did it, because I've never done that before and it sounds cool. In general, you only need to know how to do the screen and min width or max width. Try and use min width. So always think about going mobile first. Do the simplest styling first, and then as you get wider, you can move things around much easier. Flexbox and media queries go together really well.
John, do you always use something like SAS, or do you write regular CSS sometimes as well?
I, in general, will use SAS. It's included in my projects by default, and it just makes things easier. When I am doing a demo, I may just use CSS very quickly because I don't want to go and have to install, SAS and then run the SAS, because remember, I'm running this command line tool here. And every time I make a change to one of the files, it's rewriting the CSS. And that is another step. So if I'm trying to save time, I will skip that step. But SAS is the better way to do things, especially variables. Variables allow me to never have to worry about, am I using the right color? Because you can tell from my previous demo that I have no idea how to use color in a website. My wife always laughs at me when I say things like that. How would I do this job if my wife wasn't sitting across the room? This is great. All right, she laughed. I win. Okay. All right, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more question, John.
Yeah.
I think it's more basic one, but is there
Sure.
any quick way to make your footer stick to the bottom, like when we have a header fixed property?
Yes, there
What's the-
is. So hold on. Hold on, this has been a problem since the dawn of time. CSS tricks, sticky footer. This article right here will tell you, but basically the best way to do it is to use Flexbox, set the footer, so set the height of the body to 100 VW, and then push your footer all the way down to the bottom using flex rules. That's how I would do it normally. There are, as the article says, 5 ways to do it. And Chris is the god of CSS, so he should know. Yeah, and actually, so if you add content and scroll it off the screen, it still sticks to the very bottom. Yeah, having a footer that's not stuck to the bottom looks weird. So you want to have it stick to the bottom if at all possible. Okay, awesome. Great class, guys. Good participation. You see, you guys did not lose a single. You remember everything from before the break. That's great. I love it.
One more question. Maybe
Yeah.
My brain's just not working. But how did you view the HTML file in your browser? Did you just open it, or
View the HTML.
when you were demoing the HTML file?
What you mean looking at the source?
Yes.
So if I come to any page on the internet, I think it's Control-Alt-U, gives me the.
No. I mean, sorry. I mean the demo you were doing. Like, how are you bringing up the local page?
What, this page?
Yes.
Maybe I don't understand the question because I'm just clicking between a browser and my code editor.
So is the browser just reading the HTML file off your computer?
Yeah, right. So actually, yes. Thank you. Now I understand the question. I am using an extension, which I believe I've spoken about before, called Live Server.
Yes, right. I remember now. Sorry, I just
So
forgot.
if you use Live Server, anytime you make a change, it's going to reload your page for you. So you don't have to actually go and do that yourself, because that's annoying. Especially, yeah, speaking as people who've had to write a lot of HTML recently. Yes, that's annoying.
Thank you. Sorry, that was so hard to ask.
I'm sorry it was hard for me to answer. So I'm clicking between 2 windows. I figured you were there already. I figured you knew how to do that. Okay, my friends, you guys rock. I know you've got other stuff going on right now. You got a project. I'm not sure how the break worked with your project, but I do know that you've got that you're working on. So good luck with that. And I will see you all, I believe next Monday. I could be wrong, but I think it's code reviews. So we'll see how that works out for everybody. If it's not code reviews, then I'll just have regular office hours, but I believe it's code reviews. So we'll organize that. Okay. All right, my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
No worries.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.